Welcome to the 10 most broken champions in WildRift right now, and obviously there are more than 10 champions, but for this episode I'm going to present you the first 10 champions that come to my mind that I've seen too many times and are way too easy and way too broken. So without any further ado, let's hop right into the video. For our first champion, we have Jax the Split Push Demon. This champion has a decently nice laning phase with the power of his third ability and Courage of the Colossus, also fully utilizing the green tree. Next it is, you can pick Grasp of the Undying to make sure you have a better laning phase or Lethal Tempo for better scaling, depending on how many on-it items you want to purchase. For your gameplay loop, you want to mainly just use your third ability to avoid being hit in the laning phase and then get a decent trade with an auto attack on your second ability. Later, when you hit level 5, you can stack up your ultimate on minions like the passive effect, and then jump onto an enemy champion to deal even more damage thanks to the proc. The next champion we have to talk about is obviously another all-time classic, which is going to be Fiora. Fiora's damage during the laning phase, scaling wise, it's all absolutely obscene, especially in combination with Grasp of the Undying. However, if you are a better player, you can utilize other runes such as Conqueror, because you truly don't need to Grasp, but during the laning phase it makes it even more impossible to lose with this champion. Needlessly to say, you should always start with a Ruby Crystal, the lovely red shining thing for 500 gold, because it grants you more health during the laning phase, and therefore more damage because you get to deal more damage in a sense of an extended trading window. And then you can utilize this lead to then convert it into more gold because the enemy is not allowed to lane or they maybe die to you, and yeah, you get the idea. Plus, your first item is going to be the Plated Steel Caps or Merc Treads, which are then basically solidifying your lane lead because people can't really win against you once you have these defensive boots. For the next champion, we have to go over to the bot lane. And here we have Lucian. Lucian, thanks to the power of a new build which features Armor Pen Boots or Gluttonous Grease depending on what you want, Sudden Impact and Dustblade makes him really powerful in the sense of snowballing. With this, he can instantly one-tap you if he gets too close to you. Another thing that we need to talk about when it comes to Lucian is the power of runes when this champion hits you. The power of Brutal in combination with Kraken Slayer is just insane on this champion. And no other really uses Kraken Slayer and Brutal as well as Lucian, unless you look at Akshan, but Akshan really doesn't do it as well as Lucian can. Not to forget to mention that all the damage that Lucian is doing really benefits from the added armor pen, and he has sudden impact uptime nearly close to 100% thanks to his permadashing due to the cooldown reduction on his third ability with the passive hitting on champions. However, you can also play Lucian in the mid lane or even in the Baron lane, but there are a few things that make life a lot easier there. For example, in the mid lane you can start with your third ability and really force a trade and an all-in from super early on. That makes it really impossible for the enemy to respond to you because you can most of the time avoid their skill shot with your dash, get closer to them and therefore force them to use their summoner spells very early just in trade for your dash. Next to Lucian, we have to talk about a champion that basically survives every laning phase thanks to the power of his range. And no, it's not Varus, but Varus can be, well, might be introduced in the next video. But let's talk about Ezreal. Ezreal with the power of Brutal and Kraken Slayer is pretty much certainly powerful. But there are a few things that you need to know to make Ezreal even better. Using your first ability as an auto-attack reset and your second ability to make sure your third ability hits makes trades a lot easier with this champion. When you go in for a trade, make sure your second ability is applied to the enemy champion, and then you can shift in, and even for a minion wave, your third ability will always hit the enemy champion, refunding you a lot of mana and dealing a lot of extra damage. When it comes to items though, there are many things you have to consider during a game. Obviously, you'll go for a rush Gluttonous Greaves, but then afterwards it's Mana Immunity time and then going for Trinity Force. But now comes the key turning point of your entire item build. What do you build next? In some games you'll go for Bloodthirst if you need Sustain, in other games you'll build Cyrildas if you need more armor pen and just can use one spell every few moments, and another time you'll go for a Sense Reaver to make sure that your mana immunity is always fully stacked up because of mana being refunded to you. Not to forget to mention that the power of the Essence Reaver empowers your spells by 22.5% and it also counts for your ultimate. So you should really not discount the bonus damage the item is providing you. And not only this, it also gives you crit, which in some instances allows you to win a fight which you should have never won because you crit. Next on the list comes Syndra, and obviously Syndra is here. This champion is very powerful during the laning phase, isn't forced to stand still casting her first ability, and her lockdown on her third ability once it's evolved is absolutely nuts. Not to forget to mention that the bonus damage, or rather burst damage, of this champion is quite high, and she scales brutally into the later stages of the game. Her weakest point is probably the super early game because she's very vulnerable in the sense of having low HP, and this basically translates into the later stages of the game. But if she has the jump on you, or has a frontline in front of her to protect her, or any item that provides her with security in a sense that she can't get one shot, she'll have enough damage to completely dismember the enemy team. For the spell evolves, we really need to briefly talk about this because you want to evolve your first ability first because you want these 2 stacks, then afterwards the third ability for the bigger cone, and then afterwards the second ability. Your champion also gets a budget Rabadon from the passive, so your AP ratios will go really high. You will have a lot of AP. And if you want to know the secret how to hit more spells on Syndra, then wait for the enemy to go for minions because it's their natural intent to get gold, because, well, you want to do the same. And then aim your skill shot in this direction. This will make it so much easier for you to capitalize on the enemy's true goals and motives and understanding what a champion wants to do and how to punish them. And with this lead, you can push for even harder trades on subsequent levels. And on level 5, you can one-shot the enemy champion unless they have bone plating and if you have Ignite available. So with that one, you'll always be able to snowball on this champion unless the enemy jungle and support is paying close attention to you. Oh yeah, and Benzad. Now for the next champion, let's talk about Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol has received a few buffs and is now a very strong pick. He might be a little bit immobile in the early stages of the game, but he has enough damage to make up for it. And all you have to do is understand your second ability and first ability's interaction. If you fly, you deal bonus damage with your first ability, and if the enemy gets hit subsequent times or multiple times with your first ability's channel, they'll get another burst damage into their face. The same also applies to the laning phase. Rather than starting with your third ability, which you should not do, start with your first ability. This will allow you to lane and deal damage to enemy champions, and therefore allow you to actually have presence during the laning phase and not get just pushed in and then invaded into your jungle because you can't do anything. Not only this, using your third ability into the wave will not kill it instantly on the early levels, and it will allow the enemy to just go past the minions and run at you, and if they have gap closing abilities or anything along these lines, they might just outtrade you and force you into a very bad spot due to your wave's position, and then you can't really recover from it unless you get assistance. When it comes to jungling, there are so many culprits that are just so broken, but for this time I want to talk about 2 champions. And here we start with Hecarim. Even though this champion has been nerfed, it's still a very powerful champion simply due to the power of his kit. He can farm very well and he can gank very well. And if one thing is very broken in WildRift, it's being able to gank consistently well and very fast. There are few builds with Phase Rush, Conqueror, Bruiser, Assassin. All of these builds work, and depending on the game you're in and elo you're playing in, some work better even though they shouldn't, and some work worse even though they shouldn't as well. But whatever you do, be it a full clear utilizing your first ability's power by putting 2 points into it, or going for a cheeky gank with the power of Ghost in your third ability, all of this works depending on the game state. And once you're snowballing with the power of Trinity Force or Divine Sundra, again depending on the game state, you can quickly take over the game and make life living hell, because on Hecarim there's one thing you need to do. You need to snowball the game once you're ahead. You can force plays consistently because you're so fast while running through towers, running into the enemy jungle, running into lanes. You can do it all, and you can do it all alone because you have enough damage. And that's the most beautiful thing about this champion, and one of the reasons why I like to ban this champion. Another must-ban champion is Evelynn. This champion has the fastest clear in the entirety of WildRift next to Morgana. Really nothing else comes remotely close. And not only this champion's early game is not even that bad. Placing a second ability onto your forehead and flashing right into your face, charming you and then instantly killing you is something that happens quite too many times. Not only this, you can also go for a cheeky invade level 1 by cheesing your Raptors into your top side when you don't even expect it. And she does a lot of damage in the early game because she has low cooldown on her first ability, which makes her very powerful against other champions who have high cooldowns during the jungle clear. But Evelynn is a little bit peculiar compared to other junglers. Bruiser junglers can force objectives very naturally. However, Evelynn wants to go for kills to then convert these kills into the objectives. So most of the time you'll see an Evelynn stand around and wait for an opportunity to get 1 or 2 kills, and then she'll go for the objectives. Not only this, in the late game she'll most of the time proto-belt right into your face, ult you, and peace out again. And this is something which you people need to understand or learn for the future. If you play against an Evelynn in the mid to late game and you have exhaust, Make sure to press this into Fog of War on cooldown as you walk through areas that you have no idea who's in there. That way you'll make sure that she's exhausted the moment she appears before you even take damage, and maybe that will be the slight difference that will allow you to survive. As for the supports, we have Senna here. Senna is a very dominant laning champion and she has quite a few builds that have all different purposes. You have a full scaling build with mana immune, a full lethality build which is very fun, a full tank build, and like there's literally everything you can go for. And some crit items that scale with your crit chance, for example like shield bow, are very powerful to get on whatever Senna build, because during the game you gain crit chance from your souls and therefore the item will be empowered regardless. As a quick tip for laning, skill your first ability, then your second, then your first ability again, because your third ability doesn't provide you with anything during the laning phase, unless one circumstance is the case. Your jungler wants to gank and you want to use the fog to bring him into the lane without the enemy knowing, because as long as they're close, like in the circle of your spell, they will not be visible to the enemy, not even as wraiths, and therefore you can walk them into your lane and instantly gank the enemy without even them understanding what the heck is going on. To make sure you utilize the lane bully capabilities of your champion, always take Kraken Slayer and Brutal. With your auto attack, Q auto attack, which is an auto attack reset, you will apply that 3 times on Brutal and once for Kraken, which makes it very powerful. For the last champion, I want to talk about Leona. This champion is probably the definition of cringe when it comes to engaging. The ultimate's range is very deceptive and it will tag you wherever you are, so even if your little pinky toe is in the circle, in the outer circle by the way, you'll get stunned randomly. So whenever I see this spell from now on, I'm always flashing or using any type of movement ability because I do not trust the hitbox. And if you believe the same, let me know in the comments below because it happens too many times. As for damage, because her spells apply a passive called Sunlight, which is triggered by your ally spells, you will most of the time not even notice that you're taking so much damage. For example, if you're facing a Morgana and the Leona. If the Morgana is placing a puddle beneath you and the Leona is constantly applying spells to you, the puddle will instantly trigger the Sunlight passive and therefore deal so much damage to you. And the same applies to damage over time effects, so you really need to be careful when it comes to this champion. And utilizing Hex Flash on her is very powerful as well. You just jump over a wall with Hex Flash, full engage with the Zenith Blade into your ultimate, and the enemy can't even move in your full combo. And with this, we're at the end of today's video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and come back for more RiftGuides content. As per usual, thank you all for watching, and see you soon.